Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight and inspiration.
Between the demands of family, friends, and work, are you screaming inside to find time for yourself? Then check out a new independent movie entitled The Other You. I'm your host, Sandra Abrams, and in this episode, I'll talk to screenwriter Julie Gold. She's a writer, actor, and clinical social worker. I wonder how that helps her. Her longstanding interest in emotional labor. She trained at Brown, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, King's College London, and the William Esper Studio. Julie is also a published poet who has written for Forbes and Fortune magazine. The director, Shoshana Rosenbaum. Shoshana is the director of this film, and she's also known for making films that use magical realism, science fiction, and horror to explore alternative realities and gender dynamics. Her short film, The Goblin Baby, supernatural thriller about the first year of motherhood, probably seems very appropriately titled. The big news here is The Other You is Shoshana's directorial debut feature film, and one of the producers, Robin Noonan-Price, who is also a Woman in Film and Video 2025 Woman of Vision honoree. Robin Noonan-Price is an Emmy-nominated producer, director, and founder of Robin's Nest Media Productions. As a director, Robin's short film, Tell Me About Orange, screened at the Bentonville Film Festival. After a long career in educational media, Robin is now busy producing and directing other films. She served as president of Women in Film and Video DC from 2018 to 2020. And as I said earlier, she's a 2025 Woman of Vision honoree, and we'll chat more about that. Just a little bit about the film. It's about a woman seeking to carve out time to write a book, who has a husband who's too busy with his work and 3 bratty kids. I'm sure some of you can probably relate. One day she goes through a magic portal in her closet, and everything is wonderful and everybody is really wonderful. But the question is, will she stay in the closet portal or go back to reality? Welcome, Robin, Shoshana, and Julie. And congratulations on the film, The Other You. Welcome to Media Maker Spotlight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the 3 of you were all involved in this film. You're all Women in Film Video members, but I understand there were some other Women in Film members. So tell me about the other members with WIFV and what was that like working with all these other members? It sounds like it was a real family affair.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, first, I think we should mention Kimberly Skirm, who's our 4th producer and casting director. But there were a lot of other WIFV members. I mean, I would say, I don't know who's a member and who's not a member, but there's definitely a lot of people that have been involved with WIFV, or I've seen at WIFV events for a long time. Allison Bauer, who was our art director, I believe is a WIFV member. Ann Saul, who was our director of photography. Who else? Robin?
Sandra Brennan,
script supervisor.
Right. And Kat Vivaldi, who was the first AC.
I mean, our production designer, Tristan Keir-Francis, is somebody I definitely met through WIFV. I don't know if he's continued to be a WIFV member, but I met him on the WIFV web series many years ago that he did the production design where Robin was the director of that. So definitely lots of WIFV people. And it was great. It was a wonderful set. We had a great time working together.
Well, WIFV provides so many opportunities, and one of the things that we do every year is the Women of Vision honorees. So I want to turn to Robin because you're a 2025 Women of Vision honoree, and I wanted to say to you, yay! Wanted to ask you, what does that mean to be a Woman of Vision honoree? After how many years have you been a member of WIFV?
I honestly, when I worked for Fairfax County Public Schools, our manager signed us up to get memberships. And that was back in like the early 2000s. As much as I really appreciated it, I was not really as active then just because of everything that was going on in my life, my kids, my job and not living that close to DC. So once all my kids launched and then I was really able to refocus on like filmmaking, I just can't even say enough about the organization. It is an honor, and I know that might sound really trite, and I was so surprised when Melissa called me and told me. At first, it's kind of funny because I was driving and she called, and I had volunteered last year at the Women of Vision award ceremony, and I signed up again. It was a lovely experience. And so I thought she was calling about that. And I was like, yeah, Women of Vision. I signed up. I'm going to help this year. And she said, no, I'm calling you not for that. I'm calling you to tell you that you were nominated as one of the recipients. And I literally just, like, it didn't compute in my brain, because there's been so many Women of Vision awardees, I guess, from past years that are it's just such a dynamo group of people. Mariel Heller last year, and Penny Marshall, Cicely Tyson years ago, Joan Darling, Dawn Porter. So to be part of that group is really just thrilling.
Well, one question I did want to ask, you spent many years in educational media with the Fairfax County school system. What impact do you think you had on that particular, in helping students? What did you do with students? What impact do you think you had on them?
Wow, that's a great question. My department, we produced a lot of educational media, and we worked with the Udvar Hazy Center, and we put a whole series together about space. We worked with Mount Vernon, and we put a whole series together about history. And one of the programs that was near and dear to my heart was a distance learning program where students got to meet authors that, books that they loved reading. And we had those authors come into our studio and interview them. And then students had access to those authors and could ask them questions. So I'm hoping that, between all of those educational pieces, it had a big impact on students. And I don't know which students might become authors themselves one day. That would be really, really fantastic. That exposure, I think, was just really amazing.
And it gave you an opportunity to now explore the other you.
Exactly.
Well, I wanted to ask Julie, I heard that the script came about because it was during the pandemic, and you and Shoshana had connected on putting this script together. Can you just tell a little bit more about how those connections came about?
Absolutely. It's another WIFV story. So Shoshana had won an award as the DC Filmmaker of the Month, which I think was from WIFV, right?
It's actually from the Office of Media and Television, or it's a city thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
From
okay,
the
great.
DC. They nominate different people. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, congratulations again. Yeah, my memory.
Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so exciting. And I was focusing on acting at the time and getting back into acting after pausing my social work. And I wrote to Shoshana to say, congratulations. And would you be up for chatting with me about how a woman of a certain age gets parts, no less in the DC area? And to her wonderful credit, she said, sure. So we had this great conversation, and I forget what we said about acting. But at the end of it, she mentioned that she also wrote things and was telling me a bit about them. And I said, I've also been writing things. And I told her a bit about it, and her interest was piqued, and she asked to see it. So I showed her what I'd been working on, and the rest is history.
But I understand. So then you had the opportunity to go and workshop it with Stowe Story Lab, and our audience may not be familiar with that. How did you apply? How did that work in submitting that and getting into that program? And how did it help you?
Well, I have been to Stowe Story Labs twice previously. It's a program for writers, primarily film writers. And though they also now have a producer's track, and they may have other tracks now, but it's an awesome creative community that's based in Stowe, Vermont. Now they have other locations, but I had been up there as a writer, as a screenwriter. And so I knew that Stowe's mission is to get work made and seen, not just to help writers develop their projects, on the page, but also to get them off the page. So once we were at a certain point where Julie and I had developed the script together and decided we were going to go forward with this, but we decided we needed some mentoring from, neither of us had ever made a feature film. So We applied to Stowe. We did their remote writers retreat, which was less expensive and more convenient. not in some ways not as fun as
No,
going out to Stowe, but
that's good to know. There's that option for people,
yeah,
because
it really is a nice option. I haven't been to the in-person one. I didn't know what it would be like, but actually it was great. I mean, you miss that camaraderie that you have with people when you're actually together with them for a long weekend, but it was a really good experience. And we approached them as a duo and said, we're a writer-director pair, and we would like to have some mentors who are independent producers, ideally, who have made feature films, who can kind of talk us through like what the script needs and what the project needs. And so that's exactly what they gave us. And we had 3 wonderful mentors who all had different experience, and they all gave the script a really good look and gave us lots of feedback and then lots of suggestions. And one of them was kind enough to look at our lookbook even after the lab was over and give us more feedback. And so it was really worthwhile. I think I would recommend it.
And what is a lookbook?
So as a director, what you do when you're trying to get a film off the ground is you create a lookbook, which doesn't tell the whole story, but gives a sense of the look and the feel of what the film will be like. Like before you have anything shot, you have to show people something visually that gives a sense of the tone and what you're trying to do creatively and visually, and enough of the story that they understand, like the premise. And then we also addressed a little bit of, since our film involves doubles, so 2 characters, kind of like The Parent Trap, like 2 actors playing the same character, often interacting with each other. We addressed it in the lookbook how we were going to approach that visually and creatively.
Julie, what was that like for you? Was there some type of emotional roller coaster that you went on from the time you started the script to then when you got to the end, and how you were going to, all right, here's our script that we're going to use to shoot the film? What type of roller coaster? I would imagine some type of emotional roller coaster you went on.
Well, I will say working together with Shoshana was just a great experience because she is, as you said, also a writer. And so I think having a director who's also a writer is particularly valuable to be able to give feedback. So there were many iterations of the script. I forget how many, but Shoshana was really instrumental in giving feedback. And then I would do rewrites. So I do think the shooting script ended up having some significant differences from the initial script due to that great feedback. So that really was a journey.
And so, Robin, at what point did you come into this? And I think the other producer is Kim. At what point did the 2 of you come in? Together or at different times?
At different times. I had worked on Shoshana's other short films. And so, we had always said, like, wouldn't it be great someday to work on a feature? And I just remember she emailed me and she said, hey, I've got this script and it's a feature and I'm really interested in doing this. Would you like to come along for the ride, basically? And so she sent me the script and I loved it and I thought it was really amazing and I could really see the potential that it had. So I think that was around maybe the fall before we really started in earnest. And then once Shoshana had applied for a grant and she had the money for the film, then we talked over the phone. It was like, okay, I've got the money together. And I said, okay, great. I'm on board. Shortly after that, we brought Kimberly on to help with the casting piece of things. And then she also was really instrumental in helping with the SAG contract because SAG is really difficult to work with. And I had applied and submitted all the paperwork and then heard nothing for a long time. And then I was assigned a person that was supposedly my, the person overseeing all the paperwork, and they were not very responsive. So Kimberly had some connections with other SAG people, so she was able to step in and help get that moving a little bit better. So that's when we were like, okay, you just earned a producer credit in addition to casting. It was just crazy.
I think also just to add about Kimberly, she was so excited about the project. It was clear then when she did a great job casting, and it just seemed kind of like a natural fit to ask if she wanted to stay on and just be involved with the project because it seemed like a story that she was really excited about telling as well.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing at the premiere that you had at the DC Independent Film Festival at the Avalon Theater over in Connecticut Avenue. One of the young ladies, she was cast as the older teenage daughter, and she said she had never been involved in a hurricane or a tornado, having been from California. So, and they were telling her, I guess you were in the middle of filming, you were like, okay, everybody has to get to the basement. And she was like, what?
Yeah. Not once, but twice. Yes. We had two pretty serious hurricane warnings that we had to go into the basement during, stop shooting, take the equipment downstairs. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask about the funding, because that is a major issue for so many people getting their films off the ground. And often that's why people turn to documentaries first when they start doing it, or doing shorts, and they barely raise any money. So Shoshana, if you could talk about, how did you even hear about this grant? And if other people listening to this wanted to apply for this grant, what advice do you give them?
I have to say, I don't remember exactly how I found it. I was scouring the internet for any grants that were for independent feature films, for women filmmakers, for anything I could make, anything local. And it was a local arts grant from a private foundation called the Arts Development Corporation. And then the grant in particular is called the Enfleur Women in the Arts Grant. This organization funds a lot of artistic projects. I don't think they had done a lot of films in the past, but they were open to film. And so they just had an application online, and it actually was not very specific in terms of, it asked for me to submit a budget, but it didn't say how much they would give us. It was kind of open-ended. So when they called to say, can you really make the film for this amount? And I had given them the most bare bones budget I could come up with. And I said, yes. And they were like, okay, we'll fund it.
Of course you're saying yes.
But they said, we'll fund it as long as, but you have to stop fundraising. Our intention is for you to make this project, make the film, not to use the money we are offering you to leverage it, to get more funding. So, which was an easy, I was like, great, let's make the film. That's what I was interested in, not having obviously you have to have enough money, but I didn't really, one of the reasons that I was attracted to Julie's script was because it's such a high concept, low budget, perfect marriage. It was a really cool idea that we could make locally in a house with 6 actors. So I knew we could do it, and I was very excited to get started.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it. I think, Robin, you had told the story that one house fell through, and then another friend said, oh, well, you can borrow my house. And you were trying to say, but you don't know what's involved when a film crew comes onto your location or property, and what's going to happen. And did you give her all the details, or did you figure, better to say as little as possible and just get the house?
No, I laid it out there. As a matter of fact, I was almost like, oh no, you don't really want to do this. We've filmed in Shoshana's home. We've filmed in my home. I know what's involved, and all the equipment that comes in and all the crew that comes in. And so I was brutally honest with Lisa and her husband, Reed, and they were still game for it. So, we were so grateful. It was really amazing. But we also, I made sure that we had insurance in case anything happened, production insurance. And then, I also made sure that the interns understood it was their task at the end of the day to make sure everything was cleaned up and tidy. And I said, this is somebody's home. So the bathrooms need to be cleaned. The kitchen floor needs to be swept. Those types of little chores have to be done, because it's not just a set, it's a home. And we want to make sure that it's, treated that way. So everybody did an amazing job. We were very, very lucky with who we had on set.
Well, I want to talk about this closet portal, and I don't know, Shoshana, what you did to prepare for that, but I thought it was very seamless in watching the film. So I thought that was great. And maybe you can give some details on how did you prep to shoot that, and anybody else jump in if you have anything else to add.
Sure. Well, it was really down to the wire how we were going to do the portal. We had Anne, the DP, and I had some different ideas. We didn't know if we would be able to create a portal. And so I have a little tiny door in my basement, not unlike a portal. It doesn't go anywhere. But I even remember sending pictures to Anne, could we maybe do some of the shots over here? If we don't manage to build a portal, which would have been so much harder. So thank God our art director, Allison Bauer, her husband, Kurt, built a false wall and the actual portal, and then they matched the paint colors, and so no, you can't tell that it was, it looks like it was always there.
Right.
And then
That's what I said. It's very seamless when you
it's
did.
very,
Wow.
so that really a lot of it
was
goes, a lot of
great.
the credit goes to our art department. But then in terms of shooting it, Anne had some really creative ideas. So the portal, of course, sadly, to ruin the movie for everyone, doesn't actually in real life go anywhere. So we had to shoot it. We were always shooting the same side of the portal, but we had to shoot it as if we were on the different sides. And then we had to, kind of fake it when a character, some people, the smaller you were, some people could physically fit through it. We did have one intern, our high school intern, who was small enough that he could get in there, but most people could put some of their body in. And our actor who played Jack, he couldn't get much of it. He's a big guy, so he couldn't get all the way in there. So we had to, cut before as people would make the motion as if they were going in, and then we would cut to coming out the other side. So, probably the coolest thing that Anne did was, and this has become our poster, and it's like the iconic image of the film, and this is 100% was her idea, was the idea of doing a split screen with the portal. So we would shoot each side separately and have a moment where the characters are looking at each other through the portal. She contributed so much visually to the project.
Well, I wonder if that intern can fit through a portal on his resume. I think,
Maybe, yeah. There's lots of little Easter eggs for the people who worked on the film. Things that we know we did. Like there's a moment where he was inside and he closed the door because we needed the door to shut by itself. And so he had a little string, and so we'll have him put that on his resume.
Good. So, Robin, I want to circle back with you as you were one of the producers on the film. What was your role? What do you think you said, all right, this is what I'm really good at, and this is what I can contribute in doing this?
I think just the organization, helping Shoshana with just keeping things going, and more so, I think I managed the interns, kind of overseeing them and making sure that they were on task, and we wanted to make sure that they also had an opportunity to explore their interests. So there were a couple of them that were, they really wanted to do the set design and the art department stuff with Allison, and they were amazing. And then there were a couple that were, they just wanted to kind of shadow Shoshana and watch the DP and that type of thing. So we tried to make it, experiential for them as well.
One of the things I wanted to ask about was the fact that there was the tornadoes, and okay, I have to switch gears. How did you get that? All right, everybody, we don't have much time for filming. We've got a short, shooting schedule. How did you, get that all turned around and accomplish your goals on doing that, when things like that happen, when you got thrown these curveballs?
Well, I think we just all knew we had to pivot. And the day after the tornado, the power went out, and I would go and unlock the house every day. And so I got to the house and realized there was no power. And so I thought, oh no, is it just the house? And so I found a neighbor, and they said, oh no, the entire block, there's no power. So I was calling Shoshana and I said, oh my gosh, there's no power. So I think we're going to have to flip everything today and shoot outside, which is what we ended up doing. And, to the actors' credit, they just picked it right up. That was kind of crazy. And we also had a bout of norovirus on set. So that was another thing that you just had to make sure that the people that were not sick were, taking safety precautions. And it was masking and, hand sanitizer and disinfecting everything. It was just a lot of pivoting and being ready for those kinds of things to happen, and making the best of it, and just okay, we're going to do this, and it's going to have to be like this, not exactly the way we had planned. So
well, it sounds like you did it. The film is a lot of fun to watch. Everybody is great in it. I wanted to ask what's next for the film. Julie, do you have any plans of what you want to do next? Or Shoshana, or Robin, what's next for the film?
Well, we've sent it to a bunch of festivals. So we did, like you mentioned, we did have our premiere at the DC Independent Film Festival a couple of weeks ago, which was fantastic. So much fun to see it in the Avalon Theater and have such a big crowd. We really appreciate all the WIFV people and everyone that came out. So now we're pretty much just waiting to hear from festivals. Hopefully throughout the next calendar year, we're going to be going to different festivals with the film, reaching different audiences, connecting with people. And then we also have, because distribution, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, is not the same landscape as it was even a few years ago. We've already kind of gotten the jump on getting some creative DIY distribution strategies. And Julie's been instrumental in that. So Julie, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your
sure.
ideas?
One of the key themes of the film, as I think you mentioned, is emotional labor or carrying the mental load, which is all of these kinds of tasks around the house that one needs to do to keep it running, be it involved with kids or making sure there's toilet paper, or people have the right shoes, or getting to a dentist appointment. So it turns out there are a lot of influencers in this space. And so we were thinking about partnering with them, particularly around this idea of, I thought, instead of for taking a book club, for example, a lot of times people will go to the book club and either pretend they've read the book or just not mention it, and then eat food. Since this is a feature, but it's a
drink
relatively...
wine. Lots of wine to be involved.
Of course, like in the film. And I thought, this is a feature, but it's a short feature. So we could do a model like that where people actually get together and watch the film so that everybody is on the same page and nobody has to pretend they read the book, and then have some book club style questions and talking about it. So we're thinking, as I said, maybe through influencers or through other means of trying to get that out there.
But I'll just mention that there are some interesting platforms, like some startups that have started, that two of whom we've met with, and I'll just mention this because I'm sure other WIFV people are interested. Kinema is one platform that we've been exploring, which allows you to do all kinds of screenings, whether it's like a drop for a certain amount of time or a pay-per-view kind of thing, or an event in either live or online, so what Julie was talking about, these like screenings and discussions we could do through that. Julie and I also just met with this company called Olean, which is also a streaming platform, but very much just very clean model where they just take a 10%. You upload your film and then there's a link, and then they have a secure, you can block it in certain territories if you've sold the rights in certain territories, or you can just stream it. That's really exciting because it kind of cuts out all the middlemen of distribution. And it's something that I had read about in, I don't know, Fast Company or Fortune or something like that. And then Julie came across them and set up a meeting for us. And it feels like the distribution landscape is not what it used to be, but there's also lots of innovation and interesting things happening. And so we're just trying to stay apprised of what we could possibly do, ways we could get our film out to people.
That's great. You need different options considering what's going on. That's wonderful. That's good to hear. Now, aside from this film, are you working on another project? Robin, are you working on anything?
Well, I just worked on, as a producer, another feature film last October with Jane Barbara, who's a WIFV member, and some other WIFV people. And that was shot out in Chicago. It was all in the same house, similar to The Other You. Oriana Opechi, who was the director, and she used to be here in DC and part of WIFV, so she directed it in her home. So she knew what she was getting into there. So that's in post-production right now. A short that I directed about a year and a half ago is wrapping up its festival run. So Gloria's Birthday is going to be screening at the Indie Shorts Film Festival in Charlottesville. And then there was a short film it's a comedy that I wrote the script for, and Sherry Stroud, also another WIFV member, produced it, and that's also got into the same festival. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there, but Sherry and Jane are going to be there representing. So yeah,
I have no doubt Jane and Sherry, they're going to be hitting it out of the ballpark once you have them on board.
Yes.
And Julie, what about you? Are you writing anything? Are you back to acting? What's going on going forward for you?
Yeah, I am. I'm working on another screenplay, which is a little more focused on current events. However, I notice I often try to write something that, for lack of a better description, is fully in the real world, and it always skews magical realism. So I haven't had a chance to show it to these other ladies yet. But, when it's further along, I will.
Yay.
And Shoshana, care to share anything?
Sure. I was going to say, Julie texted me the other day and was like, what do you think about getting downtown Bethesda as location? I was like, should I write it into this? I don't even know what the script is yet. But I'm like, I'm so excited that you already have this producer's mindset, and that we're going to do something. Because I would love to make more films with these ladies. I have a film that I have done really very little to get it off the ground yet, but it's a sci-fi drama that's about a tech CEO that invents like a robotic AI to help her raise her children. So it has similar themes, but it's more science fiction than magical realism. And I wrote it not to make independently. And so, and when it didn't sell, now I'm like, maybe this will be my next film. Maybe I'll make a low budget sci-fi. I've done very little with it so far, other than send it to one of the actors, Vivian, who was the teenager that you mentioned, because I suddenly realized, there's a role for her in this. So when I saw her at DC Independent Film Festival, I was like, do you want to read the script that I might have a role for you? So anyway, we'll see. I mean, as a writer, I have an interactive fiction project that I'm working on, which is really fun because it's prose, which is something I haven't done in a long time. I've been screenwriting primarily for years. And it's also that has this whole interactive nature, which it's a game. It's like a choose your own adventure kind of game. It's an app. So that's been a really fun kind of work for hire thing that I'm doing right now.
Wow. So you're all staying busy in addition to working on promoting and getting The Other You into film festivals. Well, to learn more about The Other You, go to www.theotheryoufilm.com to learn more about Robin's work. Robin, what is your website or social media you want to share?
robinsnestmedia.com is my website. So there's what I've worked on there. And then I'm on Instagram as well.
Julie, care to share any social media handles?
Yeah, sure. I'm still working on a lot of my website kind of things, but my Instagram is Julie Eliz Gold, like Elizabeth, but just Eliz, Julie Eliz Gold.
Shoshana?
My website is just ShoshanaRosenbaum.com. Shoshana has one N. And then on Instagram, I'm also at Shoshana Rosenbaum. And I should say our film is at The Other You Film on Instagram as well.
So there's a website and an Instagram site for The Other You
Facebook page. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, and again, congratulations to Robin, the 2025 Woman of Vision honoree. And thank you, ladies, for participating on the Media Maker Spotlight podcast. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. This was so nice.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIFV, visit WIF as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candace Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakerSpotlight.com for more information.